Welcome, viewers, to the Master Your Money Show. So we're focusing on how to build your entrepreneurial and your financial mindset so you can make more money and accelerate your business. And today we've got a really special guest. We've got Callum Laing on here, and Callum has just got an incredible wealth of experience, over 20 years in business from different parts of the world. He's bought and he's built an incredible range of businesses in this time. And one of his current business focuses is on actually helping people who are in their current business scale up without having to just sell out of their business, but actually partnering with people in that area of things. So I was recommended to speak to Callum by a mentor of mine, Paul Dunn, and really thought that this business model where people often talking about wanting to sell their business or just wanting to continue on working in their business forever, that there was this really great medium in between that Callum's really addressing with his business too. So we're so grateful to have you on the show, Callum. Thank you for sharing your time and diving into this with us. I'd just like for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into business in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So, well, thanks for having me. So I've always been involved in entrepreneurial little ventures ever since a kid, trying to just make a little bit of extra cash on the side. So washing cars and doing paper rounds. And I think my first sort of proper business was a homemade ice cream business in Cambridge in England. And I was selling that to local restaurants and bars and things, which was quite good fun. And then my first grown-up business was a recruitment and consultancy business at the height of the dot-com boom. So we had offices in Amsterdam and Dublin and London. And that was very successful, which at the age of 23, 24, I assumed was down to my talent and good looks. And then the internet bubble burst, and I discovered I was neither as talented or as good looking as I thought I was. But it was a big learning curve, and then by that point I was pretty much unemployable. So I had to kind of focus on building my own businesses. Moved out to Asia about 20 years ago. And that was because I was kind of looking at the big macro trends in business, and one of the biggest trends was the transfer of wealth from west to east. And as a young aspiring entrepreneur, it made more sense to me to be on the receiving end of that equation than on the giving end. Mm-hmm. Moved out to Asia, and then it'd been starting, building, and then ultimately buying and selling businesses, some with more success than others, obviously. And then what we're doing now, so now I'm the CEO of a publicly listed agglomerate as opposed to a conglomerate. An agglomerate is basically just a platform that allows small business owners to take their companies public, so they get all the advantages of being public, but without the costs and the headaches. So it's in effect the business owner swaps their private stock for public stock, but just retains full operational control of the business. So yeah, that's quite good fun.
Great. And was there a particular need you saw in the market, or multiple needs there? Was that through running your own businesses that you saw the need for that to pop up, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so actually it was my business partner, Jeremy Harbour. I've known Jeremy for about a decade, and about 5 years ago, he called me up with the start of this idea. And what we had both realised, but he kind of came up with a solution, was that there's a lot of talk about startups, and entrepreneurship is very trendy, and it's with a new rock stars and all of that good stuff, especially in the part of the world where you're currently based. But actually, nobody seems to talk much about the other end of the equation. What happens when you've built a successful business? And in our experience, it wasn't nearly as much fun as we thought it should be. You build a good business, you're doing 10, 20 million in revenue. On the face of it, you're a very successful small business owner, but the reality is you're still stretched to breaking point. And there's just not a lot of options for you. By the time you've built your company out to that size, you realize that sort of entrepreneurial dream of somebody handing you a suitcase of cash to buy your business is just, it's a dream. It never happens. Trying to find investors that will put money into a business is incredibly hard, because from an investor standpoint, it's nearly impossible to get that money back out of a small business. Every entrepreneur says they'll exit in 3 to 5 years. It's kind of a default line that we use. But any sophisticated capital knows that that's probably not true, because entrepreneurs always have one more project they want to do before they sell the business. And B, there's just not that many exits available. And so, so you can't get investment to grow. So you're kind of in this scale paradox where you can't get the big contracts because you're a small company, and because you can't get those big contracts, you stay a small company. And so the only option that you've got is selling yourself to a bigger competitor, which is kind of how most companies end up exiting, which is this trade sale. But the problem with that is that it always sounds good, but it never ends up working well for the entrepreneur, because these deals are invariably structured as a 3-year or a 5-year earnout. But the bigger companies that have just acquired you now want you to conform to their corporate standards. And the reality is that us entrepreneurs, we're not very good at being employees. Normally what happens is the entrepreneur ends up leaving, either fired from their own company or resigning in disgust in the first 6 to 12 months. And it just doesn't work out very well. So my partner, Jeremy, had seen this happen a lot of times. Said, look, there's got to be a better solution than this. So why don't we create a publicly listed vehicle exclusively for the use of good small business owners? They swap their private stock for public stock, but they keep full operational control. So they go from being owner and CEO of their own company to they're still CEO of their company, but now they're owner of a group of companies. And it's, it gives you a lot of benefits. It means that when you're pitching for business, you're pitching as a $500 million global PLC, not a $5 million local business. It's much easier to attract and retain senior staff because you've got that currency of stock which you can use, and you can use that currency of stock in order to go out and do your own acquisitions as well. And you have a peer group of other business owners that have a vested interest in your success. So it can be quite lonely at the top. So that's quite a nice piece to have as well.
Yeah. Look, that's great. It really seems like that. I mean, I've never really heard of that method of business owners exiting either. It'd been just the two you described, trying to find the investors or selling out to a competitor. It
doesn't. Bits of it have been done before, but I don't think anyone's put it together, or we certainly haven't seen anyone put it together in this structure. And I think the main difference is that we're business owners, so we designed it as we would want it as business owners, and that means we keep full control over our business, whereas most of these sort of roll up and lists are run from a finance perspective, and so it's people that live their world in a balance sheet, and unfortunately small business isn't about balance sheet, it's all about human psychology. So having an accountant in a different country tell you how you should run your business, that never works well for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And how can small business owners maybe work on areas in their business to start to move to a model where that maybe perhaps working with you would be possible, rather than trying to go down the traditional avenues and pipe dream goals, as you've kind of said there about people selling out? What are the key things they should be focusing on?
So I think it kind of depends where you are in the journey. I think one of the big distinctions that I've said for a long time is most business owners don't really understand the difference, or don't understand shareholder value, and we assume that we do, because typically we own 100% of our company, and presumably that's what we're working on all day, every day. But actually what we're working on all day, every day is client value. You know, we make a million decisions about how we can enhance the value for our clients. But it's only when somebody comes to buy our company and views it, or invest in our company, views it from an external perspective, that we start to see that difference. And so I often used to advise business owners to go through the process of buying somebody else's company, because it's only when you go through that process of actually thinking about investing your own capital into another company that you start to think, you know, why are things being done like that? And I remember the first time I bought a company, and I remember, you know, going to kick the tires with the existing business owner, and I said to him, you know, I don't understand why you serve that client, because it seems like you lose money every time you serve that client. And the guy was like, yeah, I know, but they were my first client. I can't really say no to them. Fair enough. And I said, I don't really understand what Muriel does in the corner there. He's like, well, she doesn't really do anything, but you know, she keeps everyone happy, and she makes lovely cakes, and I just can't fire her. It'd just be too hard. So yeah, but you know, if I come in, I'm going to get rid of that client, and I'm going to get rid of that staff member. And he said, yeah, but you can do that. I can't do that. I kind of walked away from it thinking, oh, what an idiot. And I walked back to my own business with this kind of new set of glasses on, and I looked at my own business as I would do sort of an external investor. And I realized that I had loads of stupid stuff like that, that were kind of legacy decisions that kind of made sense from a client perspective, but made no sense from enhancing the value in the business. So I think that's one of the big distinctions. If you've already got an existing business, is starting to think about it in terms of how you create that shareholder value. If you're earlier in your journey, I'm a huge believer in partnering. So first book I wrote, it was called Progressive Partnerships, and this is an opportunity for all of your listeners to get a copy of that.
Yep.
But that was really about this idea that, you know, whatever resources that you feel you're lacking, somebody else has them in abundance, and it's just a case of finding out how to create value for them and partnering with them. In most people that have tried partnerships, they've failed, and the reality is most partnerships fail. So what I kind of developed through trial and error was a system that allows you to succeed through partnerships, regardless of whether the partnership works or not. But it's and it was, you know, purely because I just didn't have the resources at the time. I didn't have cash to pay for staff. I didn't have cash to pay for marketing channels. So I had to kind of figure this stuff out through partnerships, which I ended up doing.
Yeah. Is that system detailed in the Progressive Partnerships book?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I had to reread it again recently, and I hadn't read it for years. And while it's kind of designed for businesses that are at early stage, actually there's a ton of stuff that's useful wherever you are in business. And I realized there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'd completely forgotten about that I should still be doing. So the reason I had to reread it again was for an audio book. So that'll be coming out soon as well.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's really it's kind of on the one hand, it's quite depressing if you realize that you know, entrepreneurs often think there's a lack of decent clients, or there's a lack of qualified staff, or there's a lack of money in the world. And actually, there's an insane amount of money in the world. There's more qualified employees around the world that are available for freelancing or whatever else than there's ever been. I mean, the wealth of resources available to us is insane right now. But that's kind of depressing if you don't have access to them. It's kind of, on the one hand, it's great to know that they're out there. On the other hand, it can be quite frustrating. So having a methodology that you can apply that it comes down to trying to just figuring out how you create value for others, first of all, because if you're most people go into partnerships talking about what they want from that partnership. And that's you're kind of destined to fail if you're doing that. Whereas if you can figure out how you can create value for others, and you're constantly over delivering on that, it's very easy to then leverage that up through progressive partnerships.
Fantastic. Well, listeners, there's going to be an opportunity for you to get a free copy of that at the end of our interview here. So stay tuned for the details there. Now, there's some really incredible stuff, Carrie, you've just gone through there, Callum, with businesses who are more on the larger side of things, larger small businesses who've been operating and have those revenue figures there too, and then the other end of starting out at partnership being the best way to grow. I'd like to jump into some of the money side of things, and I'd love to really explore how you first experienced money, what your earliest money memories are, and then how that's transitioned over to how you've run your businesses and run your companies later on in life.
Yeah, so I guess I grew up as in a relatively poor environment, so I was always kind of doing little odd jobs and stuff to make a little bit of extra cash, and actually ended up sort of doing quite well from that. I've always been quite good at spending it as well. That's I tend to have that optimistic view that things will always if I've found a way to generate money, then that will last forever. As I've got older, I've got a little bit more clued up to the fact that it doesn't tend to work like that. So yeah, just some of it was luck in the first business, sort of being at the right time at the right place, which was the .com bubble. And then from there it was had the usual lean years of scrimping and saving and trying to raise capital for businesses as well. I think probably the biggest transition for me was when I started to understand the way public markets work. So we got into this about 5 years ago, and I think one of when you're in small business, basically a dollar is a dollar. You sell something for $1, you buy something for $1. When you get into the public markets, your company's market cap is based on a multiple of your profit. So actually $1 of profit is now worth $15 to $20 on the share price, and that's that's a really fundamental shift in thinking, because suddenly it makes you work a lot harder when you're looking for a contract, because that 100,000 in profit is potentially worth 2 million on the share price. So that's a really, really big significant difference, and it's in the world of small business, most of us are just completely detached from that universe. You go into the world of finance and investment, and they look at small business owners like we're idiots. They're like, of course, that's why we do it. We do everything based on multiples. It's like I feel like someone should have told me that right at the beginning. But, maybe they did. I probably wasn't listening.
And is that, do you help manage that process then with Unity Group? when you're working with small businesses, you're essentially educating them, or you're kind of taking that side off their hands, or how does that tie in with what you do there?
Yeah, so basically the way the agglomeration model works, it's basically it's a shell company. The business owners that we work with, typically the business owners that we work with, they're already doing about $1 million in profit. Tend to be debt-free, owner-operated, looking to scale, not exit, but also sort of traditional businesses. Not, I know in your world, in California, everything is determined by downloads and eyeballs and unicorn status, and anything that's sexy, we tend to avoid. We like air conditioning maintenance companies and interior fit out companies and plumbers and those sort of businesses that actually have real customers and real profits, and are very boring but predictable.
Yeah.
So yeah, we allow them to come in, and in effect, once they're in that group, they now have the liquidity of their stock. They can sell down 5% of their company and pay off the house, and get all those advantages. And what Unity Group does is we sit off to the side, we find those companies, we do the due diligence, and then we kind of hold their hand through that process, so that they can kind of make the most of being a public company.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I know you've got some resources on your website there for any small business owners who are looking to get some more information around that.
Yeah, we do around the world, sort of 5 or 6 times a year, we do a day and a half's workshop on the agglomeration model, which is it's a very fun day and a half. Basically, people come in as a director of an agglomeration on day one, and their job over the course of the day is to build it to $1 billion market cap. So we take them through all of the challenges that you face as a publicly listed company director. So, accidental insider trading and companies that fail to hit targets and all of that good stuff. So it's quite an eye opener for companies, that especially for business owners that have just been in that kind of small business space, to see a little bit of what's going on the other side. But we also have quite a lot of investors come along, because they kind of want to understand why small businesses would get involved in this as well. So yeah, it makes for a fun day.
Yeah, excellent. What parts of the world are you doing those events in?
So we definitely do them in Singapore, UK, doing one in Boston. I'm not sure if we're doing one in California next year. And I think we've got one planned for Sydney next year as well.
Great. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, well, listeners, you can go to Unity Group, their website there. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Now, as a bit of a final question I've been asking everyone I'm speaking to, in terms of their thinking, mindset and mentality in business, I'd love for you to tell us, maybe share what's one thing that's made the biggest difference in the way you've worked as an entrepreneur and running businesses, and then also what's one way in terms of the financial management side of things, what's the one thing that's made the biggest difference there?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I talk about in progressive partnerships is, rather than trying to solve everything yourself, asking who questions. So who already knows the answer to this? Who's already done this before? Who stands to benefit if you're successful? And basically, by kind of asking those questions, it's much easier to move forward. I found what I used to do was I would find a challenge or an opportunity, and I would just keep asking what questions, like, what can I do about this, or what's the answer to this, and whether I knew the answer or I didn't know the answer, I would just push forward and oftentimes end up with a bloody nose. So who questions were much more useful for me. And then I think about, I guess, the financial side of it. Again, a lot of that's come from PLCs. I think as an entrepreneur, in a small business world, mostly like most small business owners, I ran my finances through cash flow. And I didn't, there's not a lot of need to get into balance sheets and profit and loss for most small business owners. But obviously, when you start looking at the PLC world, that kind of changes dramatically, and it all starts to make a lot more sense. So I guess there's been a big shift in my understanding over the last few years as we've been involved in the public markets and understanding what different investors are looking for at different stages of the growth path.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I know you've got your book on progressive partnerships, and you've got your book on agglomerate as well. So we've touched on those two topics there. Those are those books there. Now, listeners, I know Callum's offered to give these for free if you sign up through his website, callumlaing.com. We'll put the link up there. But is there anything more you'd like to tell us about those, or any particular types of people that they're aimed at there?
No, I mean, so they're both aimed at business owners. Like I said, the progressive partnerships is more targeted at earlier stage businesses, but I think there's value there for everyone. And then agglomerate, we wrote agglomerate, myself and Jeremy, a couple of years ago, and it was really the idea about how you help solve this problem, which is fundamentally 50% of the world's GDP and 90% of private sector employment is in small business. And then the entire finance and investment community is completely cut off from that. So agglomerate is really a chance to try and reconnect the capital with the people that create the value in the world. The thinking is a couple of years old now, but it's still a useful primer. And even I think for business owners that kind of think, well, maybe that's a few years away, it's useful to understand what's coming so that you can start to build for it rather than sort of be taken by surprise. And then I'm just in the process of writing a third book, but that's more targeted for investors to kind of understand what us crazy small business owners think, and give them the opportunity to learn how to invest better into small businesses.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, look, I love that there's so much resource there you've covered. You've got all kinds of spectrums there for business covered, and through your own experience and through what you're doing with Unity Group, that's amazing, Carl. Look, I just want to thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Listeners, definitely take advantage of that. I think my biggest takeaway was when you talked about going through the process of buying someone else's business to get that fresh set of eyes to then take it into what you're doing and really kind of shift how you view things, so you're not too stuck in it or you're not too focused on just the client side of things too, but you're starting to look at how can you look as if your business, if someone was wanting to invest in it, that's great.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, well, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more interviews. We've got more focus on what you can do to really grow and build your business. We've got practical strategies, mindset, and all those areas too, as well as a focus on what you can do with your finances to really get in charge of things in your business and in your personal world so you can start living the life you want. Thanks again, Callum, for joining us. Listeners, we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.